Okay. We're going to wait for some people to pop in here. Mm-hmm. Lumine Lumpolski. What's up? I'm going to get started in just a second. Make sure you guys can hear me properly. Casey Dutton from Yellowstone, Anthony. I appreciate that. I didn't think about that one. Yeah, we have some big updates right now from Trump. It's really shocking to see what we're seeing, and want you guys to be able to see some of the updates with this ground game, this ground invasion that's going on. Let me know in the chat right now what you guys think about a possible ground invasion. Let me put that in there. You know, a ground game in Iran. What? Good or bad? We're going to go through it. We have some updates, and we have Trump talking about this publicly, and want you guys to see that because huge deal. And I just want to get this one thing set up for me real quick, and we're going to jump into it. But let me get something ready. Within here we go. Dockable window. Just give me a second. Doc name. 1 second. And we got a bunch of you guys in here already. John Lopez from New York. Thanks for the updates. Of course. Of course. Let me pop in that New York accent for you, John. You might not be from you might not be from New York City, but I'm going to at least do that. So, Catherine's in here. We're going to see how you guys are going to respond to this Trump update because, man, boots on the ground possibly right now. So let me know in the comments right now what you guys think about a boots on the ground situation. Type yes if you like it or no if you don't, because I'm going to show you guys what Daddy T is talking about with this boot on the ground invasion. He's teasing it. We're getting some other reports on what's really happening with this ground game, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about it real quick. Joshy Josh is in the chat. Well, how are you guys doing on this Saturday? It's probably 8 p.m. It's 8 p.m. Saturday night. It's March, end of March. Spring's almost coming. And our main man, Papa T, over here. Look at him. Look at him. He's so excited. Whoa. What happened? Let me fix this for you guys. Get this all set up. We have a ground game thing going on with Trump. And I'm going to show you guys first. Oh, it's Friday. It's Friday. Excuse me. It's Friday. It's Saturday down here. Head of the international dateline. Now, first, what I want to show you guys, because why not start with a little frustrating chitter chatter. Oh, so in my previous video, I shared some things about Trump and Hegseth saying contradictory things about this war. Now, a few of you, not that many, Said, proud of you, Sean. You're seeing the reality and disappointment that is Trump. Very sad. I really believe Trump would do what's best for America, not Israel. I voted for him 3 times. And it was frustrating to see in this last video, finally, because I got so frustrated with what's going on, how they give us these reasonings about money and war and all this stuff. And then it seems to be the opposite of what's really going on. And we had reasonings like this from people before we get to what Trump had to say about this ground game thing. Like, well, then vote for Kamala. David N., AOC, Ilhan in next election. Sure, they'll make you proud. As if the reasoning is you either totally agree with Trump on everything, or if you disagree a bit, you then need to be a full-fledged Democrat. What? Is that the, like as people say, cult-like attitude we've developed? Where you cannot possibly question anything that Trump is doing, or then you're a full-fledged Democrat. This guy wants Kamala. Come on, man. Well, the $200 billion that they're asking for is a lot less than Joe Biden gave to Ukraine. Okay, so that makes it better? And it's so funny to see how frustrated people get when you just ask a few simple questions about where is this money going? Why are we sending it out? Did CNN take over your channel? And when you have such an absolutist attitude, it's fine. People can disagree, be mad, unsubscribe, unfollowing. But the idea that, yes, okay, it's better than what we went through with Biden. Okay, he's closed the border. We've had some deportations. But just because you don't agree with every single thing that's going on and you're questioning, like, what the heck is going on? Why are we doing this? Is it because the neocons are winning? Is it because the military-industrial complex is winning? Or is it for good reasons? Oh, now you're a Democrat. You work for MSNBC. Like this guy in the chat, Mr. T. Are you working for CNN, NBC, CBS? Really, guys? CNN, NBC, ABC. None of these people could give a crap about me. I don't know what this dumb idea is that Shawnee Sean with his little YouTube channel has some influence with CNN. Really? Trust me, they could not give a crap about me. But what we do give a crap about is this direction that Trump is telling us we're going to go with Iran. I'm going to get to some reports in a second. But I want to go back to a few days after this thing started, where Trump was on Air Force One. You see Steve Witkoff in the back. You see Mr. Hegseth right there, looking clean with his comb back hair. And let's hear what Trump had to say back then as they questioned him on this boots on the ground idea. And you see what I mean? And then we have another stupid idea over here of, I work for Israel. I get $14,000 a post myself. You either work for CNN, MSNBC, Israel, Richard Smith says no ground game. Say yes or no in the chat for me on what you guys think. Now let's hear what Trump had to say a while ago about this idea of a ground game when he was on Air Force One.
Time, which is basically a gut instinct, we will start filling up the strategic reserves.
What are the circumstances where you'd send in ground troops? How are you thinking about that?
I don't even want to talk about it now. I mean, that's, I don't think it's an appropriate question. I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
Are you thinking about the oil facility there? There's an oil facility kind of on the coast of Iran that could be secured by ground troops. There's been some speculation that could be a target.
Well, I don't know what the speculation is, but I certainly wouldn't be able to tell you that. I'd be in trouble with myself if I told you that.
Which makes a lot of sense. Now, I don't need to tell you guys this exact strategy that I want to go forward with. I don't need to tell you guys that. Like some of the hosts we've watched, they just demand an answer. What's your full plan? Excuse me, madam. I don't need to tell you just because you're some host. But, he's not ruling it out, but he's not saying we're going to do it, right? Which makes sense. Doesn't need to tell us all of that. Now, I want to show you guys what our main man, Charlie Kirk, had to say about this idea of a ground game. Because he became one of the more critical guys of this Iran war. Exactly. Like Joshua said in the chat, why would you tell the enemy your plan? It's stupid. But we do have the established fact that Trump has not ruled out a ground invasion. Doesn't mean he's ruled it in. But in some of the updates I'm going to give you guys, we're maybe going to get some different ideas on what that really means. But let's hear what Charlie Kirk had to say about a ground invasion idea in Iran. Or Iran, as some of you say.
This is Israel's war. The worst possible case scenario is Iran says, okay, you humiliated us, you killed all of our leaders, we're going to go make this a regional mess and try to get as many people involved as possible. They're going to go after Americans, they're going to go after Saudis, they're going to go after everybody imaginable, just to create a big mess and to try to draw the world into it. Here's where I stand and where the MAGA base stands. We do not want U.S. boots on the ground. We do not want American kinetic involvement. This is Israel's.
Charlie didn't want boots on the ground. I don't think any of us do, right? None of us want boots on the ground. But now, what do we have? We have the U.S. Doesn't say boots on the ground, but let's go through this before I get a freak out in the comments. Oh, Sean, it doesn't say boots on the ground. How dare you? Oh, my God. Yeah, let me say it for you guys. Iran is how they actually pronounce it. And I've heard Trump pronounce it a bunch of ways. It's Iran, you ran, they ran. So the U.S., as Josh says in the chat, Joshua, U.S. to deploy thousands of additional troops to the Middle East, officials say. Okay? This is from Reuters, not from NBC, MSNBC, CNN, so we don't have a flip out, which I'm going to have a problem with some of you guys about this CNN stance. It's pronounced goat, not yo, Joshua, yo. Here's the report. The United States, let's zoom this in for you guys a little bit more. The United States military is deploying thousands of additional Marines and sailors to the Middle East. 3 U.S. officials told Reuters on Friday as the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran reached the 3-week mark. No decision had been made to send troops to Iran itself, 2 of the officials told Reuters, but they will build up the capacity for potential future operations in the region, which makes sense. You want to showcase, in case you're going to do that, you need to have them ready, and it also shows Iran that you're not messing around. The deployments of the USS Boxer, an amphibious assault ship, along with its Marine Expeditionary Unit and accompanying warships, come after Reuters reported that President Donald Trump's administration was considering deploying thousands of U.S. troops to reinforce its operation in the Middle East. Trump told reporters on Thursday that he was not putting troops anywhere, but that if he were to do so, he would not tell journalists. And we're going to look at that clip in just a second. One of the officials said that the troops were departing the west coast of the United States about 3 weeks ahead of schedule. The Expeditionary Unit has about 2,500 Marines. The White House referred questions to the Pentagon, which did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The additional deployments will add to the 50,000 U.S. troops already in the Middle East and would bring 2 Marine Expeditionary Units to the region. I really struggle with that word. The first MEU, as it's called, which was dispatched from the Indo-Pacific, is expected to arrive in the Middle East next week. So we have more and more troops being centered there. We have the huge U.S. warship, I think it's called the USS Ford, if I'm not mistaken, is already centered there. And we keep seeing the goalposts being moved, right? It's initially, we destroyed their nuclear program back in June, and then it's, oh, well, it's not fully destroyed yet, so we need to keep going after them. Well, we took out the leadership. Well, now their military's totally depleted, but Pete Hegseth said yesterday that the strikes are getting more and more intense from the U.S. military. So we're just trying to figure out what is going on. Now, you could take the idea that whatever they tell you is completely true, and I totally trust whatever's coming from the federal government and Trump. Or you're at least willing to look at, hey, why is this going on? What is really going on here? Because as we see more and more troops get sent to this region, including 2,500 or 2,200 it was, 2,500 Marines, we also have the Trump administration and the White House telling us that we're basically close to being done. This is a done deal. This is a victory. Despite Pete Hegseth yesterday saying that we're ramping up strikes even more, we have the press secretary telling us since day one of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump clearly outlined the U.S. military's objectives to end the threat of the Iranian terrorist regime. Iranian. Need to pronounce that right for you guys. The president and the Pentagon predicted it would take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to achieve this mission. Tomorrow marks week 3, and the U.S. armed forces are doing an exceptional job. Day by day, the Iranian regime is being crippled, and their ability to threaten the United States and our allies is being significantly weakened. As always, President Trump is laser focused on one thing: total and complete victory. Well, what is she citing? She's citing this truth from Trump, which I want to go through. Because the messaging we're hearing is that it's totally depleted. The military's totally depleted. We're so close. First, we were going to be done in a few days. Now we're even closer, but we're ramping up. Now we're asking for more and more money. I'm going to show you guys that in a second. So Trump said this: we are getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding down our great military efforts in the Middle East with respect to the terrorist regime of Iran. 1, completely degrading Iranian missile capability, launchers, and everything else pertaining to them. 2, destroying Iran's defense industrial base. 3, eliminating their Navy and Air Force, including anti-aircraft weaponry. 4, never allowing Iran to get even close to nuclear capability, and always being in a position where the USA can quickly and powerfully react to such a situation should it take place. 5, protecting at the highest level our Middle Eastern allies, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, and others. The Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed as necessary by other nations who use it. The United States does not. If asked, we will help these countries in their Hormuz efforts, but it shouldn't be necessary once Iran's threat is eradicated. Importantly, it will be an easy military operation for them. Thank you for your attention. This matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, before we break this down, we have John in the chat saying it makes sense. The regime is crippled. It is now time to make a structured transition towards a new leadership. The U.S. should be a participant in the process. Well, John, does that just mean the United States is going to run the country again? And countries don't get their own constitution, their own laws? Joshua says, we will be done when we are done. Josh says, deception in certain ways is often part of the art of warfare, so you may be onto something there, Sean. Yeah, you don't know what they're setting up for. You know, a lot of us don't know. Paulette says, John Lopez, you're dreaming about the Trump administration and the U.S. setting up a new regime. We don't fully know what's going on, but Trump said it would be easy military operation. The military is totally depleted in Iran. And yet, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, and we're going to go through that in just a second. Now, we have different viewpoints going on about this war. You have people on X being very critical, saying that it's just a whole Israel push to protect Israel, and it's not really what people voted Trump in for. And then you have people that are really close to the Trump base, Trump team, like Caroline Leavitt, obviously, but Benny Johnson, Graham Allen, a lot of these people who never sway from Trump on anything, saying that this is a great war. We have Lindsey Graham now as one of the biggest promoters of this war. And we also have Trump citing a poll from CNN about just how much support he has in all these decisions he's making in the war. And that plays a huge role, supposedly, in some clips I'm going to show you guys, in how he feels about certain decisions he can make. And here is that CNN poll that not only Trump is talking about. It's not even a CNN poll, by the way. It's an NBC poll that was shared on CNN. But Trump is talking about it. Caroline Leavitt's talking about it. The people that are super supportive of the war are talking about. And here it is.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you look at the polling data and there are numbers that just jump off the screen at you. And this is one of those. Because just take a look here. MAGA GOP view of Trump. Approve 100%. 100%. If you are a member of MAGA in the GOP, you approve of Donald John Trump. 0% say that they disapprove. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know you can't go higher than 100%. He is the 1972 Miami Dolphins. Yeah, you know.
Okay, let's break this down. As Joshua says, I'm done with clickbait, Johnson. Yeah, Benny Johnson is just basically a hyper promoter of the Trump administration in order to keep his access with the Trump administration. Keep his access, his income. That's my personal opinion on Benny Johnson. Now, how do you poll the MAGA GOP section of the Republican Party? And then, how do you ask them if they approve of Trump? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You call up and you poll on the phone or in person. You say, do you support President Trump? Now, those who fully support him and everything he does, yes, I do. Now, maybe those who are a little frustrated with the war and some other things will be like, well, kind of not. And now the poller is like, you know what? You're not a part of the MAGA base. Adios. Those of you who said, yes, I support Trump. Then I ask you the question in the poll right here. Do you approve then of President Trump's actions? Yeah, I just told you I already approve Trump. Okay, so you're a part of MAGA because you approve Trump, and then you approve of everything he's doing. So MAGA, 100% approves of Trump. And wow, that was my criteria I created. That the MAGA GOP 100% approves Trump. And this is so powerful. Not because it was on CNN, not because it got circulated on X, not even because Caroline Leavitt tweeted about it. Look at that. It's not even that. It's because of this. This is how powerful having a poll like that on CNN, despite the ways that it was curated, this is how powerful it is. Listen to this.
Polls have shown that MAGA is essentially unified behind you, as are Republicans when it comes to Iran. There's been reports that, the United States might be sending 2,500 Marines to the Middle East. Are you concerned that a move like that could potentially change the unity?
Well, I don't know. I seem to have great support because CNN came out with a poll today that I'm at 100%. And they said they've never seen a poll like that. The CNN poll said I'm at 100%, and they've never seen that before, which is an honor. I was impressed that CNN would do that. But as far as troops are concerned, I can't tell you what we're doing.
Mr. President.
The President of the United States saw or was presented that poll. Okay? President Trump, who many of us, we all have liked. Now, some of us have gotten frustrated with some of the moves, which is not a sin, by the way. And he saw that poll and got to see confirmation. Wow, even CNN is approving that my MAGA base approves what I'm doing. Because we know politicians, even Trump, nobody's immune, wants to make decisions that will keep you in office, will be popular, will especially towards your base. Now, this is an example of some of the things we have heard from some people in the administration or that have been out of the administration now that Trump gets presented data. You know, he can't keep track of everything. Of course, if you guys ran a business or you're even a manager at a restaurant or something, you can't keep track of every single thing. And that's not even at the level of being in charge of a state, a city, let alone the whole country, the most powerful country. Of course, he cannot keep track of everything. So he has people that come and present him information, share with him, hey, this is how you're doing. And this is where this decision might take you or among your base, right? And he gets presented this CNN poll of a MAGA GOP base, which just sounds. Here we go. I'm back. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm sorry. I don't know why I lost audio. Now we're back. I don't know where I lost the audio. So let's go back. Yeah, I need that 7,000 from Israel. I need that money to keep my mics running. All right, I'm back. I don't know where it cut off. So this system of Trump getting presented information, and then he's, can consider from his aides of what they present him. Okay, should I do this? Should I not do that? It makes sense. The guy can't keep track of everything. Like, I could barely keep track of everything in my own life. I don't know about you guys. And this system and situation where Trump gets presented information, and however that information is decided upon that gets presented to him, was referenced by Joe Kent. Now, before we freak out about Joe Kent, I want to point out this tweet by Mike Cernovich that said, the leaks about Joe Kent are all true. The reports about him being a leaker, he's not a qualified guy to talk at all because he's leaked information before. Those ones about him being a leaker, those are all true. But the leaks about a ground war invasion that could be coming, that looks like it's coming based on a lot of things that are happening and some leaks we're hearing from the White House, those are not true. Those speculations, those leaks, they're not true. But the leaks that are coming out about Joe Kent being a leaker, they're true. Think about that. And now let's hear and consider what Joe Kent had to say about this system of information being presented to Trump and guiding his decision-making, which could include that CNN poll that he was obviously presented because he just mentioned it in the previous clip I showed you guys.
What they did was they created basically a shifting red line or a new red line. So that if the president's red line was Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, we've actually got a lot of trade space in there for a deal to be made because of what I just described with the Iranian policy. Essentially, the Iranians saying, okay, well, we don't want a nuclear weapon. Well, that means we basically are at a point where we can start negotiating and we can come up with a deal. And the president is a fantastic deal maker. So if your goal is to move us away from any kind of deal and your goal is to move us into a conflict, you have to shift that red line. And that's where a lot of this I would say, what became a de facto U.S. policy of Iran can have no nuclear enrichment. It was laundered through a lot of the different talking heads, Mark Levin, Mark Dubowitz. You've got the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, you name it. Washington, D.C. has plenty of pro-Israeli lobbyists who will come and say those things, who will publish think pieces on it, who will go on the media, who will run, op-eds in the Wall Street Journal to talk about this, why they can't have any enrichment whatsoever. And then we have a high degree of engagement with Israeli government officials who will come in and say, well, they're enriching and they could enrich or they could enrich more, and that will get them closer to a nuclear weapon. So then enrichment basically became the new U.S. policy. And the only official I've heard, and folks are welcome to look for this, that said this in the first Trump administration was Mike Pompeo. He said it. The president didn't say it. The president has been very consistent. He said they can't have a nuclear weapon. But again, like I said, that puts us at a place where we actually could have negotiations. And only President Trump, I think, could successfully have negotiations with Iran because he actually punched them in the face. And the Iranians had been walking all over us. They had been killing our soldiers. All of that is true. I have no sympathy whatsoever for the Iranians, what their proxies were doing. President Trump level set that when he killed Qasem Soleimani and he killed Abu Mahdi Mohandas. The folks who wanted to push an actual regime change war in Iran knew this, and they knew there was a potential to get a deal, or there was a potential for President Trump just to continue the policy of maximum pressure sanctions, and if you come after us, we will hit you hard. And that got the protesters out on the street in Iran, and that's actually what the regime feared the most. I don't think the Ayatollah feared dying, not because he, is some crazy lunatic. I'm sure some degree of the Shia martyrdom culture played a factor in that. However, I think he knew that if he was killed, the regime would survive because the people would rally around the regime.
So Joe Kent was saying that the Israel officials, Israel lobby pushes certain information to get them to make these decisions to go to war. But even though he's saying Iran really feared the uprising of its own people, not necessarily being killed, because if you see, look how many have been killed by the Israeli, U.S. strikes. They've killed so many leaders. It's insanely impressive. And now, I want to get to what Trump is saying about this Strait of Hormuz, okay? Because we're getting big updates about what is actually going on in the Strait of Hormuz. Because it plays a huge factor. One of Iran's strong points or negotiating points in this war is that they have this influence on the Strait of Hormuz and the economic pressure they can put on the world with oil prices, and which affects the United States. 20% of the oil comes from there. Comes through that Strait of Hormuz. Now, we don't necessarily utilize it that much, but the Strait of Hormuz plays a big role in oil prices. That's why they keep going up. And I want to keep this in mind, which people seem to just fluff off like it's not a big deal. Who has some of the biggest oil reserves in the world? Well, Venezuela, number one. 303 billion oil reserves. You can't hear me again? Now you can hear me. I'm speaking fine, right? Saudi Arabia, number 2. Iran, number 3. Canada, number 4, coming in above the United States. Got to love that 51st state. That's why we need that oil. Now, how ironic that we just went after Venezuela because they kicked out the U.S. companies. They have this communist regime. They're just holding all the assets. The people are not living great with the economy. But Venezuela has got a lot of oil, people. And you know what eagles fly towards? Freedom fighters, Americans, American economy. Caw-caw! Oil, baby. Saudi Arabia, we have good partnerships with them. And now, which country have we been talking about going after for a long time? Has Netanyahu been chiming about for the last 25 years that we need to go after? More than 25 years. And who are we finally going after? Which Charlie Kirk said the warmongers were really rumbling for us to go after Iran. That's right. We are going after the number 3. Caw-caw! That's me trying to do an eagle sound. We're going after the number 3 largest country with the most oil reserves in the world, Iran. We went after Iraq before, number 5. All in the name of terrorism, right? Which weapons of mass destruction ended up not being a true thing. It's just interesting that we do these big missions now with countries that have lots of oil. Now, you guys can call that a coincidence, a shock, not the main reason. Well, I bet you it has an influence. Because money runs the world. Canadians prefer their gooses. And number 4, Canada. Yes, we tried to make them the 51st state. They elected Carney, the leftist guy. Trump involved himself in that election, which could have contributed to that in a big way. Canada, 51st state. Canada kind of needs us a lot, so maybe we feel like we kind of have the impact of their oil, whatever. But Iran is number 3. And these oil prices are so important, the Strait of Hormuz is so important, that Iran is saying we're going to put economic pressure on Trump, make him look bad for starting this thing as oil prices continue to rise. Now, this is Trump's update on the Strait of Hormuz.
You said opening the Strait of Hormuz is a simple military maneuver.
Very simple.
Yeah, but what did you mean by that?
It's a simple military maneuver. It's relatively safe, but you need a lot of help in the sense of you need ships, you need volume. And NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so. And others could help us, but, we don't use it. At a certain point, it'll open itself at a certain point. But we've defeated the enemy, and they are an enemy. They're a sick group of people. The leadership is gone, the Navy is gone, the Air Force is gone, the anti-aircraft equipment that they have, the radar they have is all gone, everything's gone. The strait itself, the actual strait, how are you? The strait itself is, we're doing a good job, but it would be nice if the countries, including China, if the countries that use it, China uses it 90% of their energy. Japan is 95% of the energy. It would be nice if those countries would get involved.
So let's play back a little bit of what he said. I'm trying to make sense of it. I'm trying.
Help in the sense of simple military maneuver.
It's a simple military maneuver to get the Strait of Hormuz open, right?
It's relatively safe, but you need a lot of help in the sense of you need ships, you need volume.
But we need a lot of ships, a lot of volume to help open it up, right? And disperse this threat that's in the Strait of Hormuz, which obviously is Iran.
And NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so. And others could help us, but, we don't use it. At a certain...
We don't really use it, though. We want it open, but we don't really use it. It's 20% of the world's oil. It kind of goes over to Asia. He's got a good point about that.
Point, it'll open itself at a certain point. But we've defeated...
Now, we need volume. We need ships. We need help from NATO to open it up. Well, why do we need their help? There's got to be some threat in there in the Strait of Hormuz that's blocking it, right? Which is Iran. But according to Trump, this is the state of Iran.
The enemy, and they are an enemy. They're a sick group of people. The leadership is gone, the Navy is gone, the Air Force is gone, the anti-aircraft equipment that they have, the radar they have is all gone, everything's gone. The strait itself, the actual strait, how are you? The strait itself is, we're doing a good job.
We're doing a good job. Iran is totally decimated. They have no military capability. Air Force is gone. Navy is gone. Iran. There you go, James. Everything's depleted and destroyed, but yet we need volumes of ships and help from NATO to open up the strait. Now, this is not me being mad. This is not me trying to attack Trump, but that doesn't make sense. And this is where I get the theory that they're just trying to sell a certain image to us of where this war is at. Because if the Strait of Hormuz was fully open, or it wasn't that big of a threat with Iran, then why would we need NATO's help? If Iran's military was totally depleted the way he says, first of all, we wouldn't be ramping up strikes. We wouldn't be asking for $200 billion, but also we wouldn't be asking for NATO's help for more volume and ships in the Strait of Hormuz. One of them has to be true. Either the Strait of Hormuz is an easy job and Iran is totally depleted, or there's just some random block in the Strait of Hormuz that isn't Iran because their military is depleted, according to Trump. So which is it? Please let me know what you guys think in the comments, because it doesn't make sense to me, this idea that their military is totally depleted, but yet we need help from NATO to get the Strait of Hormuz open. And for Trump to ask help with NATO and other friendly countries that we have on our side shows you just how big of a grip Iran has on the Strait of Hormuz, and that it's not this simple thing that's almost done, or like it's just a simple operation. Because to ask for NATO's help is a big deal. Also because the oil prices continue to rise. And yeah, I could see Trump speaking in hyperbole. You know, he wants to sell a good image. He does that all the time. Not just like honest with what's going on. He can't say anything bad about what's going on. You know, he's got to sell this to the public. That's true. And now we have reports that a shipping firm paid Iran $2 million to let boats through the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, let's get all these ads covered up, you guys. I'm sorry. Let's open this up for you on what exactly is going on. Make sure you guys keep hearing me. A shipping firm paid Iran $2 million to secure the safe transit of one of its ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, Iran must be pretty in control of the Strait of Hormuz if a shipping firm pays them $2 million and they get through safely. But remember, Iran's military, navy, air force, anti-aircraft, it's totally destroyed. Okay? Lloyd's List says Tehran was considering allowing passage for some ships unaligned to the U.S. or Israel, opening a potential rift between Washington and other countries. Nations including India, Pakistan, Iraq, yes, that's how it's pronounced, people, Malaysia and China, those who have been hit the hardest by the ongoing oil blockade. Like I said, most of the oil that comes through there goes over to Asia, India, Pakistan, Iraq, Malaysia, China. Now, that's the Middle East, obviously, with Iraq and Pakistan. And then you start getting to Asia with Pakistan, India. These nations are understood to be in direct negotiations with the Islamic Republic to secure a de facto safe transit of their tankers. We pay the most money into NATO, right, Joshua? You know that. And so we kind of have that say, like Joshua was saying in the chat. You guys better get involved because we put all this money in. It is part of a new vetting and registration system run by the regime's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So far, at least 9 vessels have passed through the Iranian territorial waters, according to the intelligence firm. One of them is reported to have paid £1.5 million or $2 million in exchange, but it remains unclear how the transaction was made given the extensive sanctions in place against Iran. Who knows how actual this is? But based on anything we're reading, is that Iran has control on the Strait of Hormuz. If Trump is saying, I want the Strait of Hormuz open, I want NATO's help, that tells you that we're not really in that much control. And our main enemy over there is Iran. So they have to have some control, and the only way they can have control of it is military power and things they've set up, like with the mines. Like Joshua said in the chat. Appreciate most of you guys who have been here for so long, by the way. Have some people that have been watching this stream for a while. We're at 340 viewers. That's cool. One dumbass Iranian spokesman declares the strait's closed, and that's it. They have power over there, and they can only do that if their military is not 100% depleted. which makes me question the storyline we're being sold by the administration right now as we continue to ramp up having more and more troops in the area. Now, if Iran really wants to keep this Strait of Hormuz closed, right, what is their plan? What is their leverage? We've heard from Iran that they want to drive up prices, put economic pressure on Trump and the United States to back off because they can't sell to their people this big war. If oil prices keep going up, people are going to get pissed. That was one of the big things Trump ran on, was that, man, our oil prices are so low, which is amazing. They have been, gas prices. But now if they continue to rise, that's not good. But what else is Iran thinking of doing with this Strait of Hormuz if they have the big, big bad boy powerhouse of the world, the United States, continuing to go after them? Let's listen to this interview on Tucker Carlson's show with a genius breakdown YouTube guy, Professor Zhang, I think his name is.
The good news for Iran
No, let's turn down this volume. I'm sorry, you guys.
is that it seems as though they will be able to maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz. And that is critical because now they're able to charge a toll on anyone who uses the Strait of Hormuz. And they talk about 10%, which should generate about $800 billion a year annually for Iran. So the nation will be destroyed in this war, but if it's able to harness the pride of the Persian people, if it's able to unify the Persian people, and it's able to leverage the resource of the Strait of Hormuz effectively, then we can expect Iran to rise again in like 10 to 20 years' time.
Where is Israel in a few years from now?
So if you look at the main beneficiary, the good news.
So they're going to keep charging possibly an oil tax for safe transit through the region, which we've heard about already. We've heard about this proposed like 10% toll because they have control. Money runs the world. We know this. The world needs funding. Yeah, Josh, but it was the next question. You know, where do you see Israel in all this? Because he was giving a future projection about Iran, and Israel's involved in the war. I don't really blame that question. But we see how oil is so important to how the world runs. You know, Trump's getting questions about it all the time. He even said in the Oval Office yesterday with the Prime Minister of Japan how he expected the prices to be worse, the outcome to be worse, but it's not as bad. So he thinks about the oil prices, right? And so with this question about, is Iran really depleted? Are we ramping up strikes? Are we ramping up our situation over there with Iran? Are we close to having victory, as we've heard from Trump in the previous Truth Social post I shared with you guys, how close we are to victory? Then how does that messaging work with this messaging and this, not messaging, this reality that the Pentagon is seeking $200 billion to fund the Iran war? How does that work with that? Because some people are talking about this new funding request for $200 billion for this Iran war. Some people, like Representative Lauren Boebert from Colorado, are saying this.
Not vote for a war supplemental. I will not vote for a war supplemental. No, I am a no. I've already told leadership I am a no on any war supplementals. I am so tired of spending money elsewhere. I am tired of the industrial war complex getting all of our hard-earned tax dollars. I have folks in Colorado who can't afford to live. We need America First policies right now, and that I'm not doing that. We need the Save America Act, FISA with warrants. There's a lot of hard lines that I have right now, and we've got to get our act together if we want to keep this majority. And the path that we're going doesn't look very promising.
Should the administration get out of Iran?
That's up to the president.
Lauren Boebert's like, I'm not giving more money for some foreign war. And some people are saying that. Not everybody. A lot of people are so pro-Iran war. You know, there's this terrorist thing. We need to take them out. And some people also are frustrated. Why are we spending money on this war? Why are we ramping up? If Iran is depleted, if we've made such amazing gains, why are we spending more money on a war in Iran when we have all these problems back home? It's actually a good question. And before we hear from our main man, Pete Hegseth, where he really explains the Pentagon's justification for where this money's going, and apparently that it's not just for this Iran war, I have a question for you guys. We know that the military-industrial complex is a huge thing that's continually ran D.C. We've talked about the Iraq war, how it influenced that. More government contracts, more money. The weapons of mass destruction thing was not true. It was about oil. It was partially about terrorism, but it was about oil and the military-industrial complex that seems to never end. So now that Trump's been in power for a second term, he's after a year of being in power this second time, has the military-industrial complex, its influences, its intertanglements, its tentacles, its bribes, its kickbacks, has all that just disappeared? Just because Trump's in power, just because Pete Hegseth is the defense secretary? Or does the military-industrial complex still have its tentacles in the government, still have influence on people? Is it still able to manipulate itself in there because of the long-rooted gain it has and influence it has on people within power? Because it's got to be one of the two. Either Trump and Pete Hegseth have totally obliterated the military-industrial complex, and people underneath them who get influenced by it, it's totally poofed. Or it's still there. And that push and pressure of war and the money behind it is still there. I do not think it just poofed and disappeared. Now, if you think that, please explain in the comments. Joshua said, yes, it has disappeared. How could that be? Please explain to me in the comments. I would love to hear how that's possible. And now let's hear how Pete Hegseth is responding about this $200 billion request, which some have said it's because of the Iran war. He's going to say a little bit different.
Appreciate that question. Yes, right here.
Crime. Is that the policy of the U.S. military now?
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Two questions for you. The Vice President has often emphasized that the goal of this war is to denuclearize Iran while also avoiding a larger quagmire. I know that you touched on this. I'd like you to expand on how do you do that? How do you denuclearize the country while also avoiding this, forever war? And then there was a report last night that the Pentagon asked the White House for $200 billion for Iran war supplemental. Can you confirm this, and can you explain why a package this large is necessary?
Well, first of all, none of this would have been possible without Midnight Hammer, without that audacious mission with very clear goals that did obliterate their ability to enrich and the capabilities they have in those facilities. So it created the conditions for Iran to step forward and say, okay, you can reach out and touch us like that in our nuclear ambitions. You can see that we're still trying to do this. Let's make a deal. And President Trump put our two best folks on it, Steve and Jared, and they worked diligently, earnestly. I watched it to try to pursue that deal. And ultimately, I think the whole time Iran sort of said, well, we'll talk as we build more missiles and as we build more UAVs and we create this conventional umbrella so that if we chose to, we could try to reconstitute the program. And sort of naively thinking that President Trump wouldn't do something about it. And that's why, as Secretary Rubio has said, and I've said, it's the conventional umbrella that was growing and growing and growing that was meant to protect that nuclear capability. So you had to address both what happened with Midnight Hammer and what happened with that as well. As far as $200 billion, I think that number could move, obviously. It takes It takes money to kill bad guys. So we're going back to Congress and our folks there to ensure that we're properly funded for what's been done, for what we may have to do in the future, ensure that our ammunition is everything's refilled, and not just refilled, but above and beyond. I mean, President Trump, as he said, rebuilt the military in his first term, didn't think he'd use it as dynamically in his second, but he had. So thank goodness he did that. And an investment like this is meant to say, hey, we'll replace anything that was spent. And now that we're reviving our defense industrial base and rebuilding the arsenal of freedom and cutting deals like our great deputy secretaries here is doing, long lead times on exquisite munitions, we're going to be refilled faster than anyone imagined. And I think, we're also still dealing with the environment that Joe Biden created, which was depleting those stockholds and not sending them to our own military, but to Ukraine, which is every time we reach back and look at any sort of a challenge we have, it goes back to, well, send it to Ukraine. Ultimately, we think this should be these munitions are better spent in our own interests at this point, and this kind of funding bill is going to ensure that we're properly funded going forward. We'll take out.
So it's not just for the Iran war, according to Pete Hegseth. It's to refuel up our reserves, our munition reserves that were depleted. Now, what did some of you guys say in the chat? We only have Joshua in the chat responding right now about this. He said, you would never obliterate the military-industrial complex. I totally agree with that, Joshua. It's too big. I don't even understand how big it is. Hey, let the Pentagon pass an audit, please. Good point. They have not. Steak and lobster is expensive, Good one, Joshua. Good one. The last time the Pentagon was audited was really? I imagine it hasn't passed an audit in years, I thought. So that's what we're hearing from Pete Hegseth, that it has to do with these reserves and munition reserves and refilling our stockpiles, right? And I've heard a lot of that in my comments. But remember, with Ukraine, we were giving them older equipment that was either not as useful. We weren't giving them new equipment. And a lot of the reports you guys saw of how much money we were giving Ukraine, it was in the value of the arms and equipment we gave them, which a lot of times was older equipment. But we were also giving them money, okay? But we weren't giving them top-of-the-line, brand-new stuff that we needed for our defense. Maybe sometimes we did. But at least that's the messaging we're getting from the administration, that this is not just for the Iran war. But my question is, why are we having it happen right now then? Why do we have this $200 billion that we're asking for as the Iran war thing continues to ramp up? It's got to be for the Iran war, right? Well, since we're in the mood of loving CNN polls, or polls shared on CNN, and we have Trump publicly talking about them and how valuable they are, let's look at another one that was shared about Pete Hegseth and his popularity. We're hearing that this is so popular, the Iran war, the decisions being made. Well, let's listen to this.
Look at Dick Cheney. He was 62 points above water. Look at Donald Rumsfeld, who of course became unpopular later, but at the beginning of the Iraq war, look at this. He was 58 points. I mean, look at this. It's just completely on the other side of the aisle, 17 points below water in the average. Mad Dog Mattis was 37 points above water. 37 points above water at this point in Trump's first term. Compare that again to Pete Hegseth, 17 points below water. Pete Hegseth is truly unique when it comes to Secretary of Defense's breaking records when it comes to unpopularity at this point in a presidency.
One of these things is not like the other. Harriet.
Okay, as James said in the comments,
got that.
This guy loves his polls. Watch this.
Below water.
Ready?
Pete Hegseth is truly unique when it comes to Secretary of Defense's breaking records when it comes to unpopularity at this.
This guy loves his polls. But we're seeing that, at least on this poll, if we want to take it like CNN is so good with their polls, which Trump was excited about with the one about him, Pete Hegseth is really not that popular right now. And one important thing is, how does he sell or promote this war to the American public. It's important. How is it perceived among the voting base? Now, one thing that I find funny about this poll situation was fully highlighted in this Fox News clip. Watch this.
People feel that when they go to pull the lever.
Yeah, and I got to say, the reason a lot of people are attracted to Trump, he's fun, he's authentic, he jokes, he laughs, and I mean, the left
he's lost all of his new Gen Z support, so something has shifted.
Trump's lost all of his Gen Z support, or a lot of it, she's saying.
Has shifted.
Oh, Jessica, the polls.
The polls,
All right,
when you
Jessica,
like them, you're
polls.
like, here's my poll. And then I'm like, oh, no Gen Z support. And you're like, we gotta go.
I pre-bought the Jessica polls. Okay, we do gotta go.
That is what happens on Fox News. Everything is so pro-Trump. Don't question a dang thing that's going on. And then when you bring up a poll that says, hey, he's lost a ton of Gen Z voters. Oh, no, the polls. We don't trust polls. It's fake news. Which it's shocking for me to say this, but that's what the reality has become. And then when it's a good poll about how great Trump is doing, that he has 100% MAGA GOP support above this war, Fox News will talk about it to no end. And I think it's just a funny tie-in with the poll we see about Pete Hegseth. Now, one thing that I really thought was insightful was the direction of this war and what could possibly happen. According to Joe Kent, back when he was in power, back when he was working for the administration, or about to in 2024, before he was now deemed a leaker and he said he didn't want to keep going with the war, and right before Trump promoted him and gave him appointed him, to be the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, this was what he explained would be the repercussions of going into Iran. Now, it doesn't mean that Trump and his team fully supported this guy's opinion on this, but they deemed him worthy enough to put him in a higher position. Now, things could have changed differently after that, but let's hear what he had to say before all of this, right before he got appointed by Trump, about what would happen if we went into Iran.
Let me just ask you one last question, because he called it 60 years ago. You referred to what a war with Iran would do to the United States, and I don't know that a lot of people in this country fully understand what Iran is as a nation state. It's not Afghanistan. What do you think the immediate and then longer term effects of a war with Iran would be on the United States?
Immediately, it would be very bloody. I have no doubt that we could probably defeat some of their air defense and go in there and have another shock and awe campaign. But again, like we saw how the shock and awe campaign in Iraq really didn't actually work in the long run. So I have no doubt that we'd have some immediate results that people would cheer about here in the United States. But Iran, Persia has always been an empire. It's been around longer than any of the other players in the modern Middle East right now, and they are not going anywhere. And right now, Iran has a lot of internal problem. They have a lot of internal strife with the Ayatollah and that government that's only been in power since 1979. But again, if we start conducting strikes in Iran, everyone in Iran will rally around their leader and they will become even more revolutionary. And then we will have Iranian proxies throughout the entire region that will be conducting attacks just like we had in Jordan. And really, in the long term, Tucker, the axis that has been built really since Putin invaded Russia and we decided that since Putin invaded Ukraine and we decided we were going to throw this massive sanctions package at them, China has come in as a major player and we are deeply compromised by China. They control a lot of our economy. They control global manufacturing. They're deeply embedded in Wall Street. And they've also made deals with the Iranians. They want access to Iranian petro, not to mention the fact that Biden killed off U.S. energy independence and now he's going after LNG, and the world's biggest LNG exporters are Iran, Russia, and Qatar. So this axis would become very powerful. If we get deeply involved and deeply entangled with Iran, we are playing right into China's hands because China would like nothing more than for us to be committing our military industrial base to a war in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, and then to be committing our conventional military power, our blood and our treasure back in the Middle East. That will make the Pacific, our actual border, extremely vulnerable to Chinese aggression, or China will simply just watch us bleed out economically as we bleed out on the battlefield on these couple different theaters. It's absolute insanity. It's opening up Pandora's box. And again, for what gain to the American people?
I mean, I think that's the most reasonable.
Pretty impressive analysis, in my opinion, from Joe Kent back in 2024 before he was appointed as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Because China and Russia seem to be our biggest enemies. And we put so many military assets, equipment, strategy in the Middle East. Yes, it could choke out some oil that can go to China because some of that oil from Strait of Hormuz goes to China. But we haven't really fully secured or protected Taiwan in a way. And China's our biggest enemy, that coast. That makes sense. And we would put so many resources, as you see, $200 billion being requested for Iran, into this Iran war, which, if you watch some of the war channels, they tell us how tough it is to, or military channels, how tough it is to really penetrate Iran based on the structure and the mountain ranges that it has on its western border, its northern border by a lake or sea. And then they would be able to put a lot of pressure, like they are right now, on global oil prices by closing that Strait of Hormuz. And that they have a lot of oil reserves. Now, we can go after their little island that has a ton of this oil production going on. But they have a lot of power, okay? The third most oil reserves in the world. And just wanted you guys to hear what Joe Kent had to say about that. And one other thing, as we get close to wrapping up this stream, that I really don't understand. And before I show you guys that, let's read a little bit of the comments. Tucker's losing me lately, Josh says. Not a fan probably of how much he is anti-Israel. So I strongly suspect that Iran is now having its day of reckoning. If judgment comes upon a nation, it's I, the Lord, who has done it. I believe America is God's instrument of judgment in this case. We are seems to be the center of Christianity in the world, but we have a lot of money, greed, entanglements in our country. And what I'm really confused on how this war is going and how it's being promoted and who promotes it is based on this. This is what I do not understand anymore with this whole MAGA base, MAGA thing. I voted 3 times for Trump. I knocked doors for Trump this last election. I went to the campaign offices in South Carolina. I was at multiple events. If anybody has a right to be MAGA, you know, I'm not even like that involved like some of these people that work so much time and so many volunteer hours, so much money into the campaign. I'm not that, but I've given a little bit of effort. And yet now, it seems to be the faces of MAGA, the ones that we're supposed to support, the ones that Trump is tweeting his support of and spending so much time publicly with, is Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Ben Shapiro, he's trying to get himself super involved, and Mark Levin. And in 2016, these guys were the Never Trumpers. He was too anti-establishment. He was from outside. And now we have Mark Levin sharing that this is the most pro-Israel president. We have an Israel president in office. Lindsey Graham, most of us would agree he loves war. He's always talked about it. He's never talking about South Carolina. Ted Cruz, he's super pro-Israel. And Ben Shapiro has now tried to hijack the emptiness that's created by Charlie Kirk being gone with Turning Point. They were never on that great of terms. Charlie Kirk was beginning to question and pull away from the super pro-Israel donor base that didn't like that he had Tucker Carlson at his event and wanted him to have Ben Shapiro as the main guys. These guys who were the Never Trumpers, not saying he can't change, but especially Lindsey Graham and Mark Levin, now all of a sudden, there are MAGA standards? Is that because anybody else who's questioning what's going on, they're just deemed unqualified and crappy? Trump had Tucker Carlson at the White House when he met with the oil executives a couple months ago after the Venezuela takeout of Maduro. That's a special invite. That's a powerful meeting. And now Trump has denounced Tucker Carlson as he's questioned some of the Israel influence. He's not fully gotten behind this Iran war. And we also have, compared to what we're seeing today, another person who is super pro-MAGA and gets all the access they want, and they're traditionally on the neocon circuit, is Dave Rubin. And this guy who's preaching all the positives about the Iran war, this was his prediction early as this thing started. And let's compare it to the reality of what's gone on. Doesn't mean people can't be wrong, but it shows you the lack of realism we were hearing as this started.
So allow me to make a prediction here in my prediction stuff. I'm not Polly Market, I'm not Call Sheep, but I'm pretty good at predictions. And my prediction here is that everything that the media is now going to say about Iran's going to close the Strait of Hormuz and energy prices are going to go crazy and all these, none of this is going to come to pass. That isn't to say there won't be a little bumps here and there in the market, and it's not to say one random thing, bad thing might happen to a ship or something like that. But Iran has basically, their military has basically been decimated. So they can keep doing PR stunts and having the second general of the 4th Command of the 3rd Wing of the Iranian army show up on MSNBC. They can keep do that and make his threats and say, we're going to let things through if we like you and not if we don't. But it just is utterly irrelevant. We are the sheriff. So allow me to make a prediction.
Well, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Iran's in control. Oil prices have gone way up. Now, that just could have been a bad prediction, but I think it signifies, which, as Joshua says, Lindsey Graham is a fruit. So's Dave Rubin. It signifies the messaging that we're always being told about how great this Iran war is, how close it is to being done. It's no big deal. The Strait of Hormuz just needs a little bit more ships. The military is totally depleted. But this thing keeps going. Pete Hegseth said the strikes keep going up. We need $200 billion more to keep this war going. And now we're asking for NATO's help in the Strait of Hormuz. And oil prices continue to rise. So just maybe what we're being told is not fully the truth of what is going on. And I want to close this out with a really relevant clip of Trump back in 2016 when he was campaigning for president, going against Jeb Bush in a debate. And I think it has a lot of relevance. Doesn't mean it's exactly true going to happen now, but it has a lot of relevance to what's going on or could go on with this Iran war.
The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the 2nd largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right.
The war in Iraq.
There were no weapons of mass destruction, and the weapons of mass destruction that are being promoted to us right now with this Iran war is the nuclear capabilities, which, remember, back in June of 2025, we bombed their underground nuclear sites, their enrichment sites, which supposedly were a few weeks away, according to Lindsey Graham. I don't trust Lindsey Graham as far as I can throw him. It was totally destroyed, but now it was ramping up, so we had to go. But we also have this other clip of Marco Rubio explaining. I'm trying to keep my mic close. Just give me a second. Of Marco Rubio talking about it wasn't necessarily that Iran was super close to a nuclear weapon, right? But it was Israel that we were concerned was about to attack. And I want to find that clip for you guys right now. I have so much I could say about the war in Iraq, but not here, not now, Josh says. Watching Trump is so entertaining. Lindsey Graham is a fruit, you're right. Now let me find this full clip. Here we go, right here. This is what Marco Rubio had to say about why we attacked. You know, because the official narrative we're hearing is that they were so close to a nuclear weapon, even though we supposedly destroyed it back in July or June. Doesn't mean things can't change. Doesn't mean they can't ramp up. But we heard total annihilation back in June. I'm going to play that extra clip of Marco Rubio clarifying this.
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life. They're absolutely.
He's saying right there that Israel was going to attack Iran. Now here's his clarification that Josh is talking about in the chat.
I want to just clarify what you said. I want to clarify what you said, because you said
there's nothing to clarify.
But you said I would give that.
No, but you have to read. If you're going to read the whole statement,
your quote is about we knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that would precipitate an attack.
Yeah, no, I understand. But listen,
forces.
all right, let me understand.
That's what.
Yeah, but I had a very specific question from that gentleman,
and
right?
The president said. The president said.
Hold on 1 second. I asked a very
force Israelis.
Okay, but let me answer, because this is my press conference.
Sure.
Okay. You asked me. I was asked a very specific question. So you guys can misrepresent it, but I was asked a very specific question yesterday. The bottom line is this: the president determined we were not going to get hit first. It's that simple, guys. We are not going to put Americans' troops in harm's way. If you tell the president of the United States that if we don't go first, we're going to have more people killed and more people injured, the president's going to go first. That's what he did. That's what the president will always do. He will.
You see, in that one, to me, he didn't really fully re-explain why he attacked. Yes, okay, he attacked because he didn't want Americans to be harmed, but he didn't refute the initial thing he said of they thought Israel was going to attack Iran. So they did it before that so they could get ahead of it and try to take down a lot of their military, which they've been striking them down really well. But also, Trump is saying that they're fully depleted. And it's impressive to watch Marco Rubio right there. You see how he takes control of the room. You know, this is why he is such a big candidate for 2028.
We knew that would precipitate an attack.
Yeah, no, I understand. But listen,
forces.
all right, but let me understand. But I had a very specific question from that gentleman, right?
The president said. The president said.
Hold on 1 second. I asked a very
force Israelis.
Okay, but let me answer, because this is my press conference.
Sure.
Okay. You asked me. I was asked a very specific question. So you guys can misrepresent it, but I was asked a very specific question yesterday. The bottom line is this.
See what I mean? It's impressive that he just takes control of the situation like that. You know, that's why he's going to be a formidable guy in 2028. But we're getting so many mixed messaging right now, and Strait of Hormuz is basically open, but it's closed, but they don't have any power. You know, it makes you wonder what's really going on, and is the messaging just to sell us that everything's fine and dandy and we're so close, but then we're going to ask for more money? Like, what's really going on? And I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown from these ground game progress that could be coming based on what we're hearing, what we're seeing, the troops that are being now in the Middle East. Because remember what I showed you guys at the beginning. U.S. to deploy thousands of additional troops to the Middle East, including 2,500 Marines. They already have in the region, as I said in the beginning of the broadcast, in case you guys were not here, they have 50,000 U.S. troops already in the Middle East, and now there's an expeditionary unit of about 2,500 Marines there So they're really ramping up, whether a show of force that's going on to back down Iran and show them like, hey, man, we can keep striking and keep striking. As Pete Hegseth said, they have continued to ramp up strikes each day. Or does it mean a ground invasion is actually coming because of how many troops are in the region? Thank you guys for watching. John, I appreciate you. Josh, thank you so much. So sweet. Donates. Josh sends a donation money each month. He's a member of the channel if you guys want to join. And I'm looking forward to being a little more serious about what's going on and not just so pro-Trump every single time, and not trying to be anti-Trump, but just analyze what are we being said, what are we being sold or told, and how does it relate to what's actually going on? Because we know the military-industrial complex is not a small thing. Joshua, appreciate you guys watching. Richard, James, thank you guys so much. This was fun to do a stream. Feels good to do a stream. Haven't done one of these in a long time, and maybe I'll do these more often instead of just post the videos. I hope you guys have a great night. Enjoy your Friday night. And looking forward for bigger updates this weekend. And I'll see you guys in the next one.